Nice. All right, we're in business. We are recording here. First ever episode of the collective. Let's see how this thing pans out here. We were just talking before we got started here. Don't have the most structured overall format ever, but feel like this would be a good like platform to kind of speak to maybe some things that we're working on in the industry, some updates, etc. Steve, you and I, we work together pretty closely here, and feel like we have a
Yeah.
ton of random conversations about like any updates, stuff that we're working on. That I feel like we could provide some value to other marketers or other brands or businesses trying to implement some paid strategies, SEO, analytics. I feel like throughout this show, we probably going to cover a ton of different topics, and go into a ton of different rabbit holes here. So let's kind of see what happens here. I know we got a couple pieces on the agenda here, but let's just see what happens along the way here.
Yeah, 100%. I think that, the genesis is like we have so many good conversations, over the years about certain topics. And we're like, man, if someone could just peek into this and see the conversation, it'd be super insightful. Because I just don't people get to see that kind of layer, behind the scenes of what we're all kind of talking about. So totally, man. Let's kick it off.
100%. Yeah, I feel like a lot of people can definitely relate starting off because there's a ton of industry updates and fast moving things where it's like, dude, what are people doing here? And I think this is a good segue into like the first topic that we really wanted to talk about is when I don't know when this happened, maybe a couple months back. I think you might have messaged me something about like LinkedIn content because I was posting a little bit more consistently. And then you started posting more consistently on LinkedIn, and that led to a lot of referral business and just lead generation for your business, and vice versa here as well. And I think this is a good topic for us because what we kind of stated is like, sure, we want to have the full podcast, but like ultimately, it would be great to have some more content for our personal use to promote on our socials. And this would be a good format for us to go into certain topics. So one thing that I just wanted to start off with is, and let's see how this little screen sharing aspect works. Is this overall like concept of like how businesses and brands can generate leads and business moving forward, like using content, and what we mean by that. Let's see what the screen share looks like if this works nicely. I just wanted to go ahead and start us off with this overall topic of like zero click ads, dark social, and what we think is a huge component of like generating business moving forward. I want to shout out this dude Chris Walker because this is where like a lot of this inspiration came from. Is he, and there's a couple others in this space. I also wanted to mention like Rand Fishkin. We could link this in the notes or pass this wherever. Does a really good overview of like what zero click attribution is essentially like all of these social platforms now are moving towards, how would you say it, like not demonetizing but not like providing a lot of reach when you're utilizing links. Like
Yeah.
LinkedIn doesn't want you to necessarily just promote a link and then click off their site. Like they want to keep you on here. And I wanted to start off with like this example here of Chris Walker because I feel like he produces a ton of content around this concept of how you can produce content in feed, whether it's LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, etc., that users can consume in their feed. Who cares if they click on your content? Who cares if they download your ebook or go and fill out your form right away? The goal is just to be top of mind for all of these people, of like getting in front of them with your content and your consistent messaging. Because I think, Steve, you had an example the other day of somebody reaching out to you like, oh shit, I totally forgot that like you did this. But with your post, it kind of like nudged them along the line to keep you in mind for like SEO services, for example.
Yeah, no, 100%. I was never a believer that LinkedIn could really bring business, just because I wasn't active on it. And over the years, I've just worked with a lot of people that are marketing directors or owners of businesses, and you meet a lot of people doing digital marketing for 17 years, and they're active on LinkedIn. I just wasn't. I just wasn't participating in that field. So I made a commitment after talking to you, my buddy Christian, of like, hey, does this actually bring in business? And it started to actually, and it was just like, hey, let's just start posting. It's like working out, right? You got to start somewhere. And so I made a commitment for LinkedIn. Let's post Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. We'll move through this. use a little chat GPT to help out with some writing, because writing is not my huge skill set, but at least some of the ideation process as far as getting some thoughts down into some more in-depth links. And then, yeah, people just started kind of reaching out, people that I haven't worked with for over 15 years that needed some help. And I was like, oh, what post did you see? It wasn't just one like singular post. It was just the collective, no pun intended, of all of the work together. And this has only been going on for 3 or 4 months. So yeah, it's been pretty cool to see that that it's starting to work.
That's wild.
Yeah.
It's so wild. And like, I don't even, I have no idea how I came across Chris Walker in the first place here, but like, this dude just absolutely crushes LinkedIn, and I would assume business wise is going very well. Tons of following and just like consistent posting on LinkedIn with a lot of these video content, and like, it's very simple. Usually, like a main kind of gist of this topic is like, we don't want to just simply rely on bottom of funnel lead generation for businesses. It's not just only focusing on bottom of funnel. It's like, how can you build a brand around that? And if you think about how you consume content, like, I'm sure you're listening to podcasts, I'm sure you're watching YouTube, I'm sure you're like consuming video content here, and like, great example, like we brought on a recent like project management tool, monday.com, within our organization. Like, I remember how many videos I came across them, how many YouTube pieces of content that I came across them. So when it came time to utilize like a project management software, it was like a no-brainer for us to use monday.com. It was just top of mind, and that was one of the first things that we utilized. And I think if you can, I think this could be like a good case study here as well, like of what we're talking about, is like, the more we post these types of pieces of content, kind of like very similar to Chris, shout out for the inspiration here, to see like what that does in return. Because again, a lot of these individuals are going to be consuming in platform this video content, as opposed to necessarily just relying on, one bottom of funnel aspect, like really trying to take the approach of like, how can you build like a brand around a particular service or offering that you could just be top of mind. Hey, I need SEO, I'm going to hit up Steve. Or hey, I need paid search ads, I'm going to hit up Trev, because I know they do those certain things for companies. I think this will be a really good case study for us.
Yeah, I agree, man. And it's talking about the bottom of the funnel. It's a blessing and a curse of digital marketing as far as being able to track what we can, right? 10, 15 years. And I think Brand points to this in the zero click post that he did. But, 10, 15 years ago, it was all about being able to track. It was amazing with Google Analytics and Google Ads. You can track, hey, someone searched this keyword and converted, right? Let's pump up the budgets, and we have this consistent ROI coming back. As the internet has matured, privacy policies has come through, it's become very, very difficult to have a one-to-one attribution. That's why there's different attribution models in Google Analytics, etc. It's just becoming that much more difficult, to where it's almost like billboards back in the day. It's like we've kind of come full circle to where, what's your attribution on the billboard on the I-8? It's the same thing with internet marketing. Sure, we can get a little bit more fine-tuned with digital, but it's becoming more and more difficult to that last click attribution. And so if someone is sitting there trying to consider the value of a specific program, like my Google Ads made me X ROI, my LinkedIn made this X ROI.
Yeah.
It's not the best way to look at it. Sure, it's one metric to look at, but you have to look at it holistically, because of all this. And this gets back into the zero click item. With you at monday.com, it wasn't the retargeting ad that you clicked on that was the final, straw that brought you in. And that's where it's going to get the attribution to it. Way to go, paid search team. It was all the organic that was going out there. It was the SEO rankings that they had. It was the creative director that created the great creative for that. So it's a crazy thing where it's just so much harder to get the attribution for items. But it's that zero click that it's not trackable. And trying to explain that to clients, and even for our own selves, we're starting to feel like it starts to open up the mind a bit that, things are changing on how we track and show attribution and tell that story as a business of what's working and what's not.
It's interesting because I think you hit on a really important point there, is like setting expectations with clients and how to kind of frame this to clients. Like, one thing that I've been, or I guess a couple things that I've been trying to figure out there is like, I think I think a few things, like just at least having a conversation with your client and explaining like what has changed in the industry in terms of, these social platforms aren't favorable to certain link sharing aspects, etc. I think consistently having conversations with clients have been really helpful to kind of like level set in terms of like, hey, we're not trying just to like get out of responsibility for, bottom of funnel generation or revenue generation. It's not the case.
Yeah.
It's just a shift in strategy of how to go about generating that business there. I also thought it was interesting, like Chris shares a couple points here in terms of like leaning into any feedback from the sales teams and really leaning in of like, hey, how did you hear about us? Because like to the money.com example, like guarantee there was no type of like first or last click attribution in place there that could really share that story. But like if I were to be asked that question of how did I hear about them, like, consistent content on social or YouTube ads, like without question. Um, I don't know, Steve, if you have any thoughts there in terms of like how to preface that for clients, but I feel like at least opening the door and having that conversation in terms of like, hey, here's our approach and here's why we believe in it. It's not necessarily just like we're trying to get off the hook here for attribution.
Yeah, no, that's a tough one with clients because they're hiring you, most of the time for one specific thing. Maybe if you're doing multiple things, it's a bit of an easier conversation. But I think it's your due diligence to ask the client, like, what are you doing marketing wise beyond what I'm doing? So we can paint the full picture of the scene and how I'm contributing to it. I think that's always very helpful going through reports where, um, and I've seen it, you do it before, where it by kind of breaking down what's going on in all channels first, even though you're not responsible for it, it then shows you how, let's say paid is contributing to X amount of conversions coming in total. And I think they get the light bulb of it's a cohesive effort for it all. So that I think just can be helpful. So they know like, well, hey, you're interested in what else I'm doing. Why is that? And then you can kind of get into that story and explain, why it's a challenge, um, for it. So
Totally.
yeah,
I think this will also like be helpful, for us moving forward here is just producing this type of content and having these types of conversations, and
yeah,
explaining like the general thought process that goes into this type of content.
yeah. I do want to go back on one thing, and I don't think a lot of people know it. I mean, I just kind of reminded myself this week after kind of reading back through Rand's post about the whole links being devalued on the social platforms. Like, it's
Yeah,
very clear that the content that you put out on Twitter, on LinkedIn, if it contains links, even Facebook, um, it doesn't rank as well. Like, I've seen it. Like, I've tried to share news stories about like maybe an update that's going on or something like that, and it just does not perform well from an impression standpoint. But if I keep everything on content, all my content within the platform itself, it performs way better for it. And so people don't realize like you're trying to be helpful by sharing information out, which is the right thing to do. But the moment you drop a link in your social post, it's not going to get as many views. Uh, and I don't think most people know that.
yeah. I think some people like the savvier ones are starting to pick up on that and do like the link in the first comment type deal. And I just pulled up the Rand post that you just referred to there on Spark Toro. That kind of shows like the algorithm prioritizes native content, and like you could see pretty much across the board, outside of Reddit, Pinterest, and Quora, which I think you can make a case for all of those platforms for paid social content or organic content. Not a ton there, but like majority of these are just like they're going to prioritize that native content. And most of these, like some of these, don't even allow content in, like Instagram, for example, doesn't even allow it in an actual
Yeah.
post itself there.
And
Um,
let's remind
but
ourselves
it's so
why.
true. I've tested this within my post here as well.
Yeah, but it's like why? Why are they doing this? It's to make more money. People forget. It's like, hey, you're the product. They want to put more ads in front of you. That's it. It's nothing more or less than they just want to make money. So, I mean, we have to realize that that is part of it. It's like the longer you spend on those platforms, the more money they get from the ad impressions itself. Um, and so it just is what it is. The moment you leave off, then you're gone, and then engagement rate goes away. So I don't know. Maybe someone will fix it and be okay with the advertising and come up with a better revenue model for these platforms. I don't know. It's kind of crazy.
I know. I'm very interested to see how this all pans out here because I'm assuming there's going to be a shift eventually here. But that also just kind of made me think there as well. It's like, even before all this stuff happened with like link sharing and stuff like that. Like I remember, I'm sure you do as well, Gary V, like back in the day, probably like 20, I don't know, 13, 14 type days. That dude was consistently posting content that didn't even necessarily have to do just about like social media or like lead generation or paid campaigns, and literally built a business off of that. Built a massive, massive global digital marketing agency because he just was so consistent with his content. And you knew, hey, if you want to like work with a reputable agency, like this dude's somebody I can trust because I hear his content all the time. I see him all the time. I think that really kind of underscores the value of like the consistent posting about your brand, your services, and your content, just so that you stay top of mind for all these individuals.
Yeah. No, I agree. And there's a part of me that kind of goes in a direction of how big before you get, like, as far as if you're posting so great and you're doing a lot of good things, and you seem to become like an industry expert guru. I hate the word guru, but it's like all of a sudden people are looking up to you because you're posting all the time, etc. Do you still do good work though? Like, at what point does that drop off? And it's like you're selling yourself, but then
I
the
know,
services
right?
you get, there's a compromise there. That's probably happens. And you need to do it to start the momentum, and then you're at a certain velocity, and then where's that escape velocity where it's like, oh crap, I can't keep the same quality up. Um, that terrifies me, because
Yeah.
that's something that I never ever wanted to get into, that like crazy escape velocity of not necessarily fame, but like notoriety or thought leadership. Because I know there's a lot of fakes out there too, and I'm not saying
Yeah.
those guys are by any means, but it's like, is this bullshit? When it comes across, because like even like way back in the day when I started doing SEO, like 16, 17 years ago, it's like everybody had handles. It was like way old school, like internet. Uh, and like people were bouncing around, like the Rand Fishkins of the world, a couple other people that was there, and it's just never one of those things I wanted to like jump in and get notarization, because I don't know, it just wasn't a thing that I thought would be good. But I don't know. Over time,
Dude,
the thought
same.
leadership stuff is important. It is to put it out there, but I think it's for your core group. If it goes outside of it, then sure, that's fine. But like your core group of influence and people that you work with, I think you'll stay core and you'll keep it there. So yeah, that escape velocity scares me though.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I feel like the same exact way. Like, but I feel like it's almost like I feel like we're almost at a point now where like if you do want to grow your business and you do want to like have more inbound coming knocking at your door, it's like I almost feel like you have to at this point. Like you have to
Yeah.
promote on social. You have to promote on at the very least LinkedIn. You know?
It's uncomfortable, man. It's like getting naked in front of everybody and just like, hey, here I am. Let's work together. This sounds horrible, but it's one of those things where people. To your point, it's like you may work at an agency, you might have your own consultancy, uh, you might have your own collective group of people that you work with, but it's like the decision of working with someone or with a company. It's typically the person that they want to sign up and work with. You've earned their trust. And I feel like when you when the trust is earned by someone that's actually doing the work, the sellers, they come over really quick because they see the confidence, the enthusiasm for it all. But they're ultimately looking to work with you. And I want to work with you because the way that you've talked and the trust that you build up, they don't buy the brand per se. I think at least in this digital marketing service world, it's the individual person, um, is that what they're signing for? And I think doing something like this is interesting because it does help, our own personal brands, and you have to put yourself out there, to do it. But kind of circling back, is people purchase the person, at least in the service industry itself. So
Exactly. I think that's such a good point there. And I know we probably said this a couple times, but like going to be interested. Like we have like a little mini case study here with this type of content and seeing like what this leads to. But
Yeah.
I think you hit on a really important point there in the overall like agency space. I've chatted about this with the president of eCity tons of times, and I forget exactly how he phrased it, but something along the lines of like 90 to 95% of like client success and retention is literally like your presence on calls. Like meaning clients just
Mm.
want to be able to speak to somebody who like they can connect with, but like ultimately just feel like, hey, like they're the experts, like cool, like they're running with stuff. We have so much else on our plate that like we got to focus on and figure out. We just want to make sure that we're like chatting with individuals who are confident, personable, and know their shit and just can deliver and keep it moving. Don't get me wrong, like at the end of the day, you do need to like produce some results. Like you do need to generate business or campaigns to perform. But like ultimately it's like people want to be working with people that they can have confidence in. And that's I've seen lead to success and retention on so many accounts before of just having good team members there.
As interesting. You said people want to work with individuals they have confidence in. I think that's really interesting. It's not that that individual is confident. The person that's actually working with you, that's buying your services, they're confident in you. Um,
Yeah,
that's that's a really cool saying. I think that that resonates really well in that scenario. Um,
absolutely. I think moving forward, I think what the goal is to try and produce this, I don't know, once a week if we can, and just try and rattle off some different topics here. I think what we're going to try and do is at least just to speak to stuff that like we're passionate about and that we're working on. Um, I mentioned this to you before. Like, there's a little podcast that I not a little podcast, larger podcast now, My First Million, where like they'll kind of like riff on business ideas
mm,
on the each episode. They literally just have a Word doc. They say these two guys, and they'll just have like different bullet points, and like that's kind of how we structured things off the start. We have like a little Word doc here of like different topics. We're now like 22 minutes in, and we've covered this one main topic that we really wanted to hit on here. So I think the goal moving forward would just be trying to like speak to some more, timely stuff of like any industry updates, how we're responding to AI, how we're responding
sure.
to GA4 signals, or like whatever the case may be. I think moving forward, we'll kind of cover some additional topics here, but I think we did a good job of kind of like laying the groundwork in terms of like what sparked the inspiration to try and create some of this content and like what we're going to try and do moving forward with this content.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And this longer form kind of setting is great. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and they can last 3 to 4 hours typically, and you get into the nooks and crannies. I don't think we'll go there. Maybe, who knows? But this longer form way of kind of articulating ourselves is it's fantastic. It's so much better. Sure, we're gonna chunk it up into small clips that can be easily digestible, the snacks, but we'll have the larger meal if you're interested. Uh, but yeah, I mean, we can jump in a couple things. I guess there's one item I do want to
Exactly.
touch base.
Exactly.
That's a little bit like it touch base on zero click, then we can move on to a couple other topics. Uh,
Yeah.
is I don't think a lot of people realize, and I think this is still the case. I could be full of shit, but back in the day, it used to be like that. When you're searching on your phone and you have a result that just pops up in your web browser, and it like auto fills in the website itself, because you're searching up a brand, or maybe you're not search, or maybe it's an unbranded keyword, but it's still like auto suggests a website. Um, that click that comes through, a lot of people don't
Yep.
realize it's direct traffic. It's like I call it like dark web traffic. You don't know where it comes from, and then all of a sudden, like your direct traffic comes in. People don't realize that, even though it's kind of like a search function, like, oh, is that organic coming in? So I've had a lot of clients where they're doing something and that increases their direct traffic out of nowhere. That's something too that's like not super tracked, and especially if it's through Apple itself, um, they have their own search engine that prioritizes information. Uh, and so when it comes through, but it's direct. It's not like, hey, this came from your Apple search bar. So it's kind of one of those other mysterious tracking items. But I think that's probably a good segue, because one of the other things I do want to talk about um, is GA4. Right? Yay. Who's had fun with GA4? Uh,
Good old GA4.
yeah, it's been luckily got all of our clients moved over, but then Google obviously auto force stuff. So that's the thing people don't realize too. And like the end of July, they auto forced everybody to get a GA4 if they didn't have it, so they created one, and then they moved over a bunch of conversions, older conversions. So some of our clients' accounts, they've got things enabled that they shouldn't have enabled because they migrated it over and that's where they came from. So you got to make sure you clean that up. But GA4 itself, I think the biggest thing that I've had a challenge with is for websites that have a large amount of traffic. And this is for UA Google Universal too, but it's more prominent. At least I'm seeing it on the GA4 side. Let's see if I can articulate this correctly. Is that they are sampling data that comes into the website. If it's a large website, they're not processing everything by a 1-to-1 ratio. And so what can happen is that some items, let's say your website gets 10,000 visitors, and let's say you want to track an event, maybe it's a conversion that maybe only happens 10 times a month. It's only a form that fires a handful of times, but they're really high value leads. Maybe it's like a B2B thing. But you have 10,000 visitors coming in and there's a signal of 10 coming in. Because it's sampling, a lot of those conversions will not show up, or those event actions will not show up by default on how it's set up in Google Analytics. And let me just share my screen real quick. And Trevor, I'm sharing. Make sure you fact check me on that one if that sounds right to you. Let's see.
That definitely sounds right there. Yeah.
All right, so let me screen share this side.
I think I know what you're about to share too, and this is wild.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I can't show a live result of the data switching because I don't want to show client information, but this is our own analytics. But under admin in your GA4 accounts, let's see if this works. And then you go to reporting identity. So by default, most people have turned on Google Signals. You can read up on Google Signals, but basically it's supposed to help with a cross-platform attribution. So someone's on their desktop,
like cross-device or cross-domain.
Cross-device actually, devices. So you're trying to understand what the relationship is with an individual, and so it's more of a blended information that comes in. But what people don't know is that if you wanted to just look at the device-based activity, which is the identity evaluates only the ID only. So it's kind of like old school analytics tracking. Like, don't give me all the fancy blending things together, giving me your guess on what happens when someone's on their phone and then on desktop because they're signed in. You can track it. If you just want to go and just look at the actual user device that hit the page, you can click on device base and hit save, and it will change your GA information. Depending on how large your website is and how much traffic, that's how drastic it will change. But that's where I'm finding these small conversions are disappearing when they are in blended mode. And so you can extract them if you hit device base on here. So if anything, anybody takes anything from this, just go play with this setting in your GA4 and see how it changes events, conversions, and page views potentially, and even visitors coming into their website, because you might have your hidden conversions in this pocket. And what's interesting is that you can toggle this back and forth, and it doesn't like mess up data moving forwards or backwards. It's like so if you switched it right now, it will go backwards on all your data, and then if you switch it back, it will go back to the data it was before. So it's almost like a view of a different view. Like, so GA4 doesn't have views, like different view properties, but this is kind of like almost like a view property that you can toggle back and forth that I've been looking into more. So if you're missing data, if this check mark box, I think, yeah, if you see this little check marks up here and it's not green and I think it'll have like a red icon as like thresholding, it's going to be happening to you. But regardless, look at your data, just do it. See what is different in your profile under reporting identity, and click on show all and device based. I don't know why Google hides it down there, but just take a look and see if your data is different. I think that's something that has been really eye-opening with some tracking that I've been doing with clients. I didn't even know this was happening.
So wild, but like so interesting to see that. I've heard so many stories from clients or like other marketers of like conversion data looks much different from UA to GA4. And I think like playing in this setting could give some good context as to why that might be.
Yeah. So just try it, see if your data is different or not. We can dive into like more details later about it, but I just saw something that, hey, it's different. I didn't know about it. I don't think a lot of people knew about it. I'm sure the analytics gurus out there are probably laughing and like, yeah, Steve, of course, this is happening because of this. Well, can't be expert at everything. You're just dangerous enough at everything. So for sure.
I feel like GA4 is going to be a constant on this on the show here.
Yeah, probably. The reporting is just really difficult to extract out. But I don't know. Maybe they'll have some. Mostly it's usability, in my opinion, and of how things used to work in Google Universal. You can click on an item and you can kind of go deeper into the report. It's just not the case in GA4, so it's just not really user friendly. I'm sure the data's better, but just the interface and some of the usability stuff is just a miss. But hey, after all, it's a free product for most people. Most people aren't buying the Google 360 suite, which is really
It's also
expensive.
true.
This is all free. It's free. So you can't complain about it. It's free.
That's very true. I also think that's a good point there. If you're if you're listening to this right now and you're like interested in analytics or data or anything like that, it's a huge opportunity for you to like become an expert in GA4 because I'm sure a lot of brands would be willing to work with you to optimize their GA4 profiles. A lot of agencies would use that because a lot of people like what we just went through right there have no idea that that's even a possibility in GA4 or that's even on their minds. So if you're looking for like a side hustle right now and want to like make some extra money or start like a little side agency, if you could optimize the shit out of GA4 profiles, know in the ins and outs, the differences between data, that is such an opportunity for young individuals, I feel like.
Yeah, it's 100%. That and it's not like super difficult to learn. I mean, you can create your own profile and start messing around with it and doing it. There's plenty of classes out there from Google too, and just getting some real world experience on. It's not that difficult, but the need is going to grow because what's happened is people did the necessary item to move to GA4. So they knew it was going away. We actually ran an ad campaign uh, to get leads so we could actually help transition them, thinking they might become bigger clients. And we got a handful of clients in that way, like actual true like paid search Google ads, but like GA4 migrations. Um, and it was cool. They came in, but they were just kind of looking for, I just need to get this set up because someone said I needed to get it set up. Okay, great. Now that it's set up, actually using it, most
Yeah.
people haven't. Like most of the conversations I've had with people is like, yeah, I haven't had a lot of time to spend on it. Yeah, I haven't really clicked around too much. Or yeah, I've gone in and looked
Yeah.
at some reports. It's okay. But the moment, their boss or another stakeholder says, hey, I need my quarterly report and I want to dive into something very specific about organic landing pages and conversions and time on site, that's when they're going to be like, oh man, I don't know how to get this. So I think that, yeah, huge opportunity for analytics hustlers. And that's I think, going to be for a long time, at least a couple of years, for sure. And the best part about analytics, it's only as good as the tracking is. So if you change your website up, it's like, hey, we have to redo the tracking on the site. It broke. I mean, breaking analytics is common, very common. The code goes missing off the site, you lose attribution.
Yeah.
Um, so it's as much as it could be like a project-based item. Maybe you set up a simple retainer that's a lower rate that it's like, hey, I'm monitoring your analytics, maybe providing them like a dashboard of some sort at a low rate. And then when they need you, it kicks in like an hourly.
Oh yeah.
Something simple like that. So it's a simple passive income to be your GA4 babysitter. I wonder if GA4babysitter.com is available.
Yeah, absolutely.
If we mention it, do we have to buy it?
That's a great one.
Uh, yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's a
yeah,
brand right there alone.
yeah, right. Like GA4 hosting for things. Yeah, it'd be interesting. Was there any other topics that you wanted to jump into? I
That's
know
funny.
I'm GA4 analytics all around. I mean, there's been some stuff happening this week, but nothing too crazy, in my opinion.
Nah, I think those really like dark social stuff and some GA4 stuff that we covered were
Yeah.
like the main pieces that I like to cover here. I think next week maybe we can get into some more like some more topics. I feel like we got a good like a good baseline here and a good like foundation set for like the general structure of the show and like some of the stuff that we're going to talk about. Those were the main pieces. Unless Steve, you got anything else you want to cover here?
Now I could rant all day on stuff, so yeah, I should probably shut up on things so we keep it concise to the point. But I like it. No, this has been fun. I love the longer form conversation, and hopefully it does come off, conversational. Uh, so we're just trying to do here is provide two brains talking back and
Yeah.
forth on different topics. So yeah, hopefully everybody enjoyed the first go around, but we'll see what happens. But yeah, I mean, I've got if this goes well, I mean, dude, I want to bring on Ricardo. We got other people we want to bring on. There's a lot of people that I've
Hell
worked
yeah.
with over the years that would be fun to kind of jump in on different topics, and really see where this goes. And we can give them their little soundbite clips. Maybe that's our pitch. It's like, hey, we're gonna do a podcast. Don't worry about the podcast. It's not gonna get any views, but we're gonna give you clips
We
that you
got you
can
with the
then share
clips.
socially. Yeah, and that's the whole point. And then they'll be, yeah,
Yeah.
come on in. You make all I gotta do is show up and talk, and you're gonna provide me social media fodder that I could put out there. So maybe that's our pitch too for people to join. That there it is.
I
Right
love
on.
that.
Well, we'll wrap it up
I
then.
love
I
that.
think that's it.
Cool. Let's call it here, and then yeah, if anybody's listening, you have any like interesting topics that you'd want us to look into or cover, we'll, like we said, potentially bring on some guests and just keep riffing on some new topics. Just want to like have a helpful forum here because definitely know sometimes, especially in remote work and all the stuff that's changing in digital marketing, you definitely feel like you're on a little island there, a little isolated, and want to make sure that like we're trying to bring together some strategies and some insights in terms of like how we're approaching some of these things. So I feel like we did a good job covering that. Hopefully this provides some type of value or help here.
Right on. Ditto. I like it.
All righty, folks, much appreciated. Later.
Easy enough.